Coming to you from the Varsity Sports Bar and Grill, it is another special episode of the One Morning Out of Here podcast. Hi, everyone. Let's open the first beer today. Oh, there we go. First beer of the day. I'm Dan Carroll, and what is today? The 27th?
All day.
And only a few more days to go, and this will be removed.
I like it, Dan.
From
we
my
talked
face.
about this. I think it's.
I'm ready for it to go, man.
I think
Can't take it. Can't take it. Cleaned up all around it today. What the level of care and attention that I got to put into this is it's more than I wanted to.
Kind of makes me suspect on his other hygiene habits. If that is the bitchiest thing he has to do for hygiene.
Just saying, I don't need it in my routine.
Well, I'm Rob, Dan. Thanks for
take it away, Rob.
Thank you, buddy, for introducing me. We're joined with Jason Kiefer and a man in black, not Johnny Cash, who will be introduced here very shortly. A man that, as you can see from the video, has one hell of a mustache himself. This is Major Mike. We will go into this in a minute. Is that okay, Mike?
That's great.
All right, thank you, buddy.
Don't sound overexcited there, Mike.
I might add that with regard to I had a goatee that I had to shave off because I started to look like Moses. So,
the llama
set my people free.
Yeah. Since I have nothing inspirational. To
it was the Charlton Heston Moses.
Correct.
That's the one you want right there.
Right.
Well, we know. Dan brought up the 27th, so we're creeping towards December, and Friday is December 1st, and the Christmas season, holiday season, whatever I call it Christmas, and I'm going to do it, is upon us. Engraved in USA, our partners and friends at Engraved in USA, they've been in business for over 25 years, engraving your business awards, promotional items, employee and customer items, brewery drinkware, golf outing accessories, promotional and recognition items. If you're a small or global company, we have the team that can design and produce quality items to enhance your business. Call the team of Tanya, Tammy, Tim, or Rich at 513-682-2557 and say 100% to get the best personal touch from our friends at Engraved in USA. And I called them, and that little special gift I got looked pretty good today. Rich sent us a picture of the mug that shall be given
as a gift.
As a gift to
turned out very, very good.
To our friend down south that spoke with us last Monday. Sound good. I'm calling him. I'm getting all kinds of stuff, all kinds of goodies and things are going on there.
You'll see it throughout the podcast, but we'll put the site up to where anybody wants some merch, we will give you the ability.
And you have the kitty cat.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
Oh, I do. I'm gonna knock that out right quick.
Oh dear God. Let's just get it over with. I went shopping for a double XL sweatshirt this weekend. It's called 3Ls. Yeah, there it is. Ohio State. Yeah, it's getting more faint too. Ohio State. I took Ohio State +1 loss. Louisville -3 loss, and Florida getting 6.5 loss. I basically hated this weekend betting. I won cash on DraftKings, but it was some weird stuff.
So, Mike, Rob will do some bets like the Bear used to.
Okay.
And
yeah,
he's been eating shit the last 3-4 weeks.
So what's new?
Yeah. Jesus. That's how we're getting on.
He started off with a lion's growl. Now he's down to a little teeny tiny kitty cat you can barely hear in the background.
Used to sound like this.
Yeah, I used to be the lion, baby. And then now with the faint kitten, you can hear the car speeding off that ran over my ass. It sucks. I've been getting killed, Mike.
I won't add to that. There's something I can say to that, but I'll be quiet.
Well, you know what? No, bullshit. Let's get into that for a second. How I know Mike Hartzler.
Perfect.
Major Mike Hartzler, retired deputy with Hamilton County Sheriff's Department for how many years, Mike?
39.5.
39. I think where you and I became really good friends. They had an issue, I believe, in 07 in this area, issue 27. It was a pro law enforcement issue. And we went to the victory party, and
right.
I was a prosecutor at the time, and you were running District 5 here in Anderson.
Correct.
Went down. I can't remember the name of the place. It was on Vine Street to watch the returns come back for that issue that we worked so tirelessly for. And I'll be damned if I'm not sitting at a table with a ton of Bud Light bottles with David Pepper's mom and dad.
Yep.
When I see a flash from a photographer in the restaurant,
mm-hmm.
They come up, "What's your name, sir?" And I go, "Rob Herking. I don't want to be in the newspaper." Okay, not a problem. Next morning, about 7:15, my boss, Don White, calls me. after my dad had called me, hey, just FYI, where were you last night? I was like, why? He goes, because you're on the front page of the paper with beer. I was like, how many beers were in front of me? Thank God that waitress had cleaned up all the bottles.
Right.
And then my boss called, hey, Rob, you have fun last night? I was like, Don, I already know what you're talking about. I was there pro law enforcement levy, and you and I went down.
We did. And I guess I should share with everyone today, which I've never told you, that I paid that reporter $50 to take your pictures.
A man after my own heart.
The guys framed that thing, and it's in my office. My mom's got it somewhere.
Was that the front page of the Claremont Sun?
No, it was
or
the front page of the Cincinnati
how
Enquirer.
about
Right.
that?
Not
There
even
you go.
Metro. It was front page.
I was supporting my sheriff, Simon Lease, and I believed in that issue, and as did you.
Yes.
And we, despite whatever our political affiliations were, stood up for our principles.
Best efforts. Hey, you could only try.
Correct.
That's it.
It's a lesson that
Did you
people should
really
learn.
pay that photographer?
No.
All right. Jeez.
Do you think I?
No, it was getting that last gerbil in the back up
You're not
and running on
you're
that
not,
wheel.
You're not worth $50, my man.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I didn't have. Yeah, I spent $50 on the beer for you that night.
I don't remember
That was in
paying.
the first round.
Yeah.
I don't remember paying anything really.
No, I think
You were my DD, which was very, very nice of you.
it was a good time.
Yes.
And
We've
for
had
worthy
many a
cause.
good time afterwards
We have.
over the years. And from Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, when did you retire there officially, Mike?
Officially 2006. No, 19.
2019.
Getting old. Yes.
And then where did you
July.
go from there?
I went to a corporate company as the senior government advisor, but I should add, in between my time in 2013 to 2016, I was the director of the Greater Cincinnati Fusion Center. And for those of you that don't know the history of fusion centers, they were first established after 9/11 to correct the lack of intelligence and information sharing between state, local, and federal partners.
That's when everybody after 9/11 brought things under Homeland Security as best they could.
Well, that's it, after Homeland Security was formed as the result of 9/11. The Department of Homeland Security sponsored the fusion centers by keeping intelligence officers and so forth, and a number of other things that in the fusion centers. But fusion centers work very closely with the JTTFs and with the FBI, with a whole plethora of different federal agencies today.
Just throw a bunch of letters together, you'll get them.
Correct. Yeah, I had to give a whole list of acronyms because I had no idea what they meant.
Well, you said JTTF, and I'm like, all right, wait, what is it?
So
Joint Terrorism Task
Joint
Force?
Terrorism Task Force.
There we go.
Yeah, those are out of each field office of the FBI in the United States. Their primary mission is terrorism, whether it be domestic or international. And then we got into the human trafficking and transnational crime and all the other lovely little things that go on in the country.
That people try to put their head in the sand and forget about.
Correct. Yeah, people actually believe they live in a bubble
Yes.
until it affects them.
It does not affect you until it affects you.
Correct.
And that's kind of one of those topics I personally, from reading through everything, that we wanted to get you on the show about, because my bottom line is it is going to affect you one way or the other someday, sometime. And there's a lot of hubbub and play in regards to minorities and it affecting them and all this other stuff. And we're speaking about, let's just throw it out there, Chauvin and Floyd. I mean, Chauvin's been in the news lately. Somebody decided to make him a pin up with a push pin.
Yeah,
in
you got
prison
a
after
great Thanksgiving gift.
But more importantly, also the Department of Justice came out with a report, as well as some other things have been coming out. Mike, what are you aware of that has come out recently that was unknown at the time of Chauvin's trial?
Well, I just recently read the toxicology report, which was definitely quite a bit different than what was presented at trial, and a number of other things that for example, the type of use of force that he used was actually part of their training, as they originally said. So, which only tells you that if a police officer is being filmed, he's not going to be doing something he's not supposed to do.
Typically.
And especially with a case like that. The end result, as tragic as it was, certainly did not warrant the moral outcry that we saw in this country.
Keith, do you have a video of Floyd? I mean, I know everybody's probably seen it, but for those of you that have not, it's a short clip, I believe, of Chauvin.
Yeah, the one you sent me.
Yeah. And it's brief, and it cuts back to the testifying of, I believe, one of the Minneapolis Police Department's supervisors, who was indicating that was not policy at that time, which I believe has now been found to be a lie, if it's the same video I'm thinking of. But
yeah, I got it right here.
Is this a trained technique that's by the Minneapolis Police Department when you were overseeing the training unit?
It is not.
And how does this differ?
I don't know what kind of improvised position that is.
They're not in the manuals. Well, they sure as hell are in Derek's training manuals. So how can they say that they don't exist?
And MRT is in there?
Yes, it's in there. So how can you say that's not part of the training?
Some of you and
you can go on Instagram and find
others are so locked into racial idolatry and allegiance to blackness that you don't care that 4 police officers are rotting in prison for doing what the city of Minneapolis trained them to do.
That's a cut of a bunch of other different things.
I started in law enforcement in 1980. Mark Cars did, but no, I actually
have one of those ones like Kojak did. You throw it up on the roof.
Yeah, detectives and unmarked, but and volunteer firemen.
It's amazing how everybody got out of the way when he came down the street. Oh my God, look at that flashing light.
Yeah, well, there was nothing else going on, and we didn't have the headlights we did today. But
shit, our fire trucks have $10,000, $20,000 worth of lights, and nobody moves.
Yeah, that's true. So, I would say that I've seen over the years how things have changed and progressed, and there are ways to properly do that, to take someone into custody, and so although that was trained, I would say today that's not something that you should do. As we saw with George Floyd, he had underlying medical conditions and had illegal narcotics on board. So, that contributed to the rest of it. So,
no, he's sitting there with his knee on him. I mean, I would tend to agree with the woman. I'm assuming a mom or a relative that was holding up Derek's training manual. Should refer to him as Derek. And I did see the quote in the training manual that was in the DOJ report. I mean, he's not moving like you alluded to, Mike. He knows he's getting filmed and he is not moving off that, which tells me it's probably an improved position for them.
Well, again, there are a lot of factors that are involved with that, and it's evident that was pervasive is in the department and as an accepted use of force. However, as I said, in today's world and what we know today, he may very well have not been cutting off his air, which probably was the fact, and wasn't cutting off any blood to his brain. But given and I'm not speaking as an expert in this field, but this is from what I've read, my assumptions that due to what, like I said, the narcotics that he had on board and the pre-existing heart condition, that it just added to that, and so he couldn't. He thought he couldn't breathe.
Well, and these are the unfortunate things that nobody should have died. Like that's, I mean, we don't want to see anybody die, when law enforcement's involved. But it's something that Chauvin would have had. You could have had your assumptions about it. I make runs on people, and I'm pretty sure they've got extracurriculars on board, right? But to know like whether he had an underlying health condition outside of his
which he did,
his recreational pharmacology that he decided to put into his body, Chauvin isn't expected to necessarily know that. So like when I watched it, way back right when it happened, I had seen that a ton. As a medic, me showing up and being called, they're holding them down till I get there to be able to check them. You know, me and my team are able to check them out. It's just, it's unfortunate that all this shit comes out after the fact, after he's convicted. You have, and then, you know, then he's in jail, he's in federal prison, and isn't even protected there. He gets stabbed.
Yeah, I was extremely surprised that someone was able to get to him.
Yeah.
Although that's not the first time that's happened to a cop in prison. So,
Right.
But I was extremely surprised that they didn't have him under protective custody.
But just going back to when this incident took place, and you look at that video with the narrative that accompanied that video. And that is, you combine those images with the narrative that came with those images. It's very powerful stuff. When that happened, a day or so later, I had Tim Rodenberg, who was the one-time sheriff of Claremont County, also an assistant prosecutor under Don White.
I know him well.
Great guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, I said, Tim, I said, when you were and this was, he had been retired at this point, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I said, if someone had come to you with a video of one of your deputies doing this, and I said, what would you have done? And the first thing he said was, well, we don't have the complete context.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
that, and we did not have the complete. So I even myself, because my radar is, being a media guy, my radar is always up for this kind of stuff. And I was taken in by it. And I was foursquare on board. This was wrong. No ifs, ands, or buts. Guy needs to go down. He's a dirtbag cop and all the rest of it. But then the evidence that has come to light subsequently, and the one thing that really bothers me is that the next day, the autopsy was done, the coroner's report was done, didn't show any evidence of strangulation.
Right.
That information never got out to the people who were rioting. And to me, that is, we now are we're still living with the consequences of what happened after that, because by and large, the BLM protesters and the mobs and all across the country believe that this man was murdered in front of our eyes. And it turns out that was not the case.
Well, let me ask you this question, just with your statement that you just made, though. Had that information gotten out to the rioters, do you honestly think that would have stopped them? Oh, they would have done a ceasefire on the city of Minneapolis and everywhere across the country? No, because these people want to go out.
Well,
they
sure,
want to cause fucking trouble.
They wanted to go out and raise hell. I understand that.
But when you the way you said it, I'm just asking for clarification.
But that information never came out.
That was important for trial.
It never came out.
Right. Of course, the toxicology reports wouldn't have been available
right.
for quite a while, but that's the problem today is people, every one of us should not be judging whether it was right or wrong by looking at that video.
Correct.
That's for professionals to follow up on and do it correctly, and not based on politics, but based on the facts. And I agree with Sheriff Roden that you would have to take a look at the facts. Everyone does that. Every reputable police agency investigates use of force, and if there's a problem with it, then they act accordingly. And it's been that way ever since I was started in 1980. Things like that just don't go on now. And I agree with you that there should have been a lot done to quell what was going on in the country, but unfortunately, they allowed people to get away with that and continually get away with it. And then I'll add one more thing, that there were pallets of bricks being delivered in Seattle from I don't know which company that was delivering them, but it's like you order bricks to your house and the truck comes and lifts the pallet off. That's what was going on. So someone was paying for that. Even when these protesters came to Cincinnati, the majority of them weren't from Cincinnati.
Well, of course not.
So how are they getting here? How do they afford that? They're young kids, or I call kids, but teenagers, young adults. How do they afford to travel all over the country to do this? They have to have some kind of sponsor. And I think that's what we need to be focusing on.
I think the DOJ needs to spend equal amount of time focusing on that money train. You know they're getting money from somewhere. Find out who's paying this shit for the civil unrest.
Well, that's where a lot of people are going to jump in and say it's all George Soros funded, and it's all these
It's-
left wing organizations that he
It's from a
that he
multitude of
supports and all the
sources.
rest of it.
It's coming from everywhere. I'm sure there's something buried with a bunch of sources that funnel it through something, some buried organization where it's going to be a nightmare to try to trace back. But here's my curiosity. This happened with Floyd in May 25th of 2020. He went to trial in March of 2021.
Mhm.
Before any of this stuff came out with toxicology. I find that incredibly fast for a murder charge against a cop. Plus, you know he's going to be crucified. He's sacrificed. I mean, that's
Right.
exactly what it is to
Yep.
quell the violence that was going on at that time, not only there, but nationwide because of the other unrest and the focus on minorities getting assaulted or killed by what they claim is police misconduct. Why was that not slowed down? Let the temperature cool on the civil unrest. Let's get the toxicology. Let's get the whole thing. This guy's life's on the line at this point in time, at least decades of his life.
Well, I will tell you, and you as a lawyer know this, that it's a prosecutor against defense attorney, and they both want to win. And so I'm sure that case was pushed to go to trial as soon as it could.
Oh, yeah.
And then it depends on what kind of defense that he had. You know, if they could push it off or whatever they could do.
Well,
And
he
that-
was
and
out
then the
there.
other factor here is that just as soon as this happened, Ben Crump was in town and there were lawsuits filed immediately. So the city's looking at ways to get out of having to pay as much as they can. So all this business comes up. This wasn't in the training manual. This wasn't that, and they shouldn't have done it. They don't allow it. They don't approve it. And then he gets convicted. And so it relinquishes a certain amount of liability on the city.
The city settled for $7.5 million.
Right.
What I don't understand though is if his mother had access to that training manual that was in Derek's possession, she was holding it up. That clearly showed that, according to her. I didn't read through that manual, but I didn't watch the trial transcript either. If I've got a client like Derek Chauvin here, and I don't have toxicology reports back yet from the person that is deceased, and my client is charged with a manslaughter or some lesser degree of a murder, and that could be one of the causes of that individual's death. But for that toxicology, the pharmaceuticals that he was using that he got on the street, because I'm assuming they were not through Walgreens or CVS, I want that information because I want to show it to the 12 jurors. They're going to be deciding my client's guilt or innocence. And whatever judge denies me the ability to continue a case because they want it done, or whatever prosecutor is hooping and hollering, I'm telling the prosecutor, you hurry up, prick. You're the one in charge of the toxicology. You're going through the corner or whatever lab you go through. I'm going to get a continuance, or else that is a grievous deprivation at that point in time for his constitutional rights.
I don't argue that, but a number of factors come into play here, and the competency of his attorneys. And there's a whole raft of different issues. I'm not an attorney, but they go to.
I wasn't there, and I'm not
go to the
bagging on
appellate
him.
court. I don't know what happened with that. And I agree. Neither do I. But I know he just lost an appeal.
Yes.
So I know. Yeah. And was that with the U.S. Supreme?
I don't
Court?
know if it was Supreme U.S. or not, or if it was the whatever they call it in Minnesota.
Is it because he's been convicted under federal charges?
Yeah.
So he's going to have to go through 2 appellate processes and to get to, and you know how long those take.
And with a plea on a federal, I mean, you
Right.
pretty much waive all your appellate issues.
Correct. And things are a lot different in the federal court than they are in state court. So I don't argue any of that. In fact, I agree with that, and that toxicology report was or should have been ready by that
Mm-hmm.
time. It just wasn't handed over to the defense. And so, which calls into question prosecutorial misconduct
Yeah.
and a number of different things that, even though I was in law enforcement,
We just had one
as
like
long
that
as
in
I
Hamilton
was.
County, they claim.
Well, I think
They claim. I'm not, but
I'm
not a part of that.
Hamilton County has an excellent prosecutor's office. I wouldn't say anything bad about that.
No, I'm not.
So before we get too far away from this, though, are you
That case just came out though this past summer, and I'm not one way or the other on it, but that was the allegation there.
are you telling me, Rob, that you don't know if the training manual was ever introduced into evidence?
I do not. I did not watch the transcript.
It seems to me any first year law student would know that
If you want to
if
pull
I
me
have
up,
a
I'll buy
training
it.
manual, if I have a training manual that shows that this is a technique that is trained for these officers.
The argument's going to be,
You're going to tell me I'm not using this as evidence?
I'm
I'm
sure
not going to present this to the jury?
it might have been presented as potential evidence the defense wanted to use, and the judge may have said you're not using it. It's not relevant to the murder. It may be relevant to a civil suit against the city and Chauvin for the ultimate death, but because that
How
goes
can
more
it not
to
be relevant if they're saying his actions cause the death of this
he
guy?
was the instrument. He was the
Yeah.
implementation.
Yeah.
There's the other thing too.
But he's saying I was trained to do this.
Look at Tate Bianca.
Well,
Charlie Manson. I mean, he was the instrument. He was the trainer. They did it.
well, the other thing too, I think, is that they may not have accepted the copy or what his mother had, as opposed to what the city submitted.
Well, there's got to be other
evidence.
training manuals around, I would imagine. We have more than one.
I would guess
Somebody started
I
in
don't
his
know.
class.
And it may have been, I don't know, the judge may have ruled it was irrelevant, wasn't allowed, I don't know.
For
And
God's sake.
and then the jury may have discounted it for all we know.
I think the toxicology report, though, would have been more relevant, more key, more imperative. And maybe for whatever reason they decided to go forward, or Chauvin said, no, I don't want to waive my fast and speedy. I want to go to trial now. I don't know. My advice would have been, hey, let's get that toxicology back. Let's let everybody have the little free shopping adventures and brick throwing parties, and let's do a trial next year, maybe.
Well, and hypothetically,
he was out, wasn't he, the whole time pending trial? Somebody posted
No,
his bond.
that I
thought.
don't know.
I don't think so.
I can't see him being
I
out.
can't remember. Somebody,
I don't know for
I think
certain.
the others were out, but he may have been. I don't know.
But just for hypothetical, they could have changed their policy in that training manual at some point. Now, when he went through, yes, that was what you were trained in your recruit class or whatever. They could have changed it, but there would have been a memo stating that the fact that date, and whatever commanding officer was, administering the memo for, the police. I guess the police. That was the city, right? Police chief.
$1 million bond. He was released October of that
Okay.
year.
Okay.
Well, I'm talking a lot here, but
That's why we had you.
The city would have to have trained. If there's any policy changes or
Exactly.
or changes made, then they would have had to, depending on the veracity of the change, then they would have to either do it during an in-service training or present the manual and have them sign. That's what we used to do, is sign off on the change. You read it, you sign off that you've read it.
Yeah, you
and-
understood it.
and you understood it, or it's taught, it's mandated, and it's taught during in-service training. So
There would be a paper trail for that.
that something at that level would definitely have come out immediately, and they would have been informed. And if that didn't happen, I can't even imagine that.
And that's the only thing. That's where my confusion is, because like when my chief throws a policy change out to the manual, we have sign offs.
Mhm.
Yep, read it, got it. Here's a date, my signature. So I don't know if a change happened from when he went through, because apparently, according to that video, and we haven't vetted 1000% that video saying it was in his training manual that you could do that move. But if it was changed at some point after he was on the streets, there should be a signature stating that he saw that.
And regardless of any of that, if that wasn't the proximate cause of death, then, which appears that it was not, then it would have nothing to do with whether he's supposed to do it or not do it.
It's a moot point.
Correct.
Well, all I know is I've got the coroner's report right in front of me, and it reads no physical evidence suggesting Mr. Floyd died of asphyxiation. And then the next day, the coroner had a meeting with the prosecutor's office and the FBI.
Mhm.
So I don't know why that would have had to take place, but maybe with the prosecutor's office, but the FBI. Not exactly sure why that happened.
The first thing I thought of was this: if you can't speak clearly when you're being choked, you can't speak, and you're very clearly it sounds like you're being choked. And then, secondly, if your blood is cut off to your brain, you're out.
Yeah.
Almost immediately. So none of that happened. It was evident just by listening to the tape that his air was not cut off. He kept speaking and yelling that he couldn't breathe, which was evidently, and again, I'm not a physician, but it's more likely to be related to the fact that he had an existing medical condition and the drugs that were on board.
As the paramedic sitting in the room, when I hear somebody yelling, "I'm choking," I immediately look at you and say, "No, you're not," because you're speaking.
Right.
You are moving air. Yes, you are uncomfortable right now, but you are not choking.
Right. So they now they teach not to do the Heimlich maneuver if the person can speak. Isn't that correct?
Correct. So I mean, I see that part of it, like the paramedic side of me. I can't breathe. But you're screaming like a son of a bitch through downtown Minneapolis.
Shut up, quit expelling air, and start sucking it in. You'll be able to breathe. Mike brought up a good point, though, before we went on air, that back in the day when you were a cop, and once I got somebody in handcuffs, everything was pretty much taken care of. I didn't give it. Kick the shit out of the vehicle all you want. Do whatever you want, man. I know you're not swinging on me. You might be able to kick me. That's when I have some buddies come over and help me strap your feet together. But once you get them in the car, too.
And like he said,
it's pretty set.
Hurt the car. Okay, hurt the car because you're not hurting anybody else, but you're possibly yourself. Break a leg or whatever, but you're contained.
And as a whole, you're right. And I've had over the years people kicking on the windows and kicking. So you get them to jail as quickly as you can. You don't take them back out, because once you've got them in there and they're contained, you don't want them back out until it's a secure area.
Yep.
So I don't understand why they did that. He was in the back of the car, shut the door, and get him to a facility that's secure, and you can get him back out.
It's like catching a wasp in the house in a jar. You don't open the jar to look at it again before you get it outside.
Secondly, in the neighborhood and with people looking and carrying on and everything that was going on there, that could have been avoided had they just kept him in the back of the car and taken him to jail.
I believe I've said this on this podcast before, and we just talk about what I do, but I tell all my younger guys, scoop them up and go, because where I work, a mob will form. It creates 17,000 other issues that you have to deal with. Scoop them up and get out of here. We'll figure it out down the road. But you vacate the premises, so that way, to your point, you have a more secure area to work. Whatever that work may be. But everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody's videoing.
Yeah.
So
somebody that's already resisted arrest, you can't predict what they're going to do.
No.
Exactly.
So you have to get into an area where it's secure. They're out in the street. And on top of that, I'm Monday morning quarterbacking is easy to do, but that was the first thing I thought was, why did you get him out of the car and not just leave him in there in the cruiser, or they call him whatever they call him there, but leave him there and take him and get him out of there.
The issue I had, though, with the report itself from the DOJ is the systemic throughout Minneapolis in and of itself. The MPD won, but even the people that appoint the supervisors and promote, it is replete with example after example. And I'm not even going into percentages, et cetera, because it's all racial according to everybody else in this report. But here's my thing, whether black or white, and they focus obviously on the minority aspects, Native American, Somalis, because they got a large Somali.
It's the largest Somali population in the United States.
Well, the one, and Chauvin is in this one.
Ilhan Omar. Don't even get me started on that.
There was a mother wanted to remove her teenage child from the home and claimed he had assaulted her. The officers and confronted the black 14-year-old who was lying on a bedroom floor playing with his phone, moved to arrest the teen, but he pulled away. One officer, Derek Chauvin, struck the teen in the head with a flashlight multiple times, pinned him to the wall by his throat, then knelt on the teen's back or neck. The mother pleaded, "Please do not kill my son. He's only 14. You've already got him in handcuffs. Please take your knee off my son." Kept the knee on it for over 15 minutes. That was prior to George Floyd, obviously. We know how that happened with George. But another one, though, that this one was not Chauvin. This was a traffic stop with a bunch of teenage Somalis in a car. Officer approached with his gun drawn and ordered a teen to get out, threatening, "If you fuck with me, I'm going to break your leg before you even get a chance to run." When the teen asked why why he was being arrested, the officer replied, "Because I feel like arresting you." later, when one of the teens told the officer, "You're a racist, bro," the officer responded, "Yep, and I'm proud of it." He said, "Do you remember what happened at Black Hawk Down when we killed a bunch of you folk? I'm proud of that. We didn't finish the job over there. If we had, you guys wouldn't be over here right now." Now, nobody else present intervened or anything, and there's multiple other examples. And then they talk about the press that was there, the journalists as well, during the coverage of the protests that erupted after George Floyd. And May 30th, 2020, officers encountered journalists who were sheltering at a gas station. Officer pointing a 40 millimeter launcher, which is a rubber bullet launcher to quell violence, or to quell
for riots.
Yes. Approached a journalist who was filming, holding up his press credential and shouting on press. The officer forcefully pushed the journalist's head to the pavement. As he lay on the ground, the journalist held up his press credential. In response, an MPD sergeant pepper sprayed him in the face, then walked away. Now everybody gets up in arms. Well, bullshit. Protesters, all this other stuff. And, I'm a First Amendment advocate. And I know probably everybody is here. They're in my way. I'm trying to get to work. These people, they don't have jobs, all this other bullshit. I agree. It pisses the shit out of me. There's a right and a wrong way to protest and get your voice heard. A lot of people say, good, fuck them. I have to get to work. If you condone it, it continues to grow and everybody loses their rights.
Well,
blacks, whites, Somalis, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, etc. It becomes systemic and it just keeps growing the tentacles until everybody's raptured in this.
With regard to protests, if they're contained and they're non-violent, I think it's a slippery slope to go down if you try and, because someone wants to go to work and it's I understand that people get aggravated with that. But you have to be very careful. We do have a constitution and we do have to follow our constitution and recognize our constitutional rights. That does not condone any type of violence. It doesn't condone blocking streets. It doesn't condone blocking bridges. It doesn't include
expressways.
Right. But you have to contain that. And as we've done in Hamilton County and Cincinnati during protests, they were very well contained.
Yep.
And when it got out of hand and they couldn't stop it, then people were arrested and they were removed from the area. But, there were large crowds of people. And I have no idea. I haven't read the reports about these other incidents, but I have some strong feelings about use of force. And with regard to what you were talking about, where they threatened to break his leg, there used to be in the use of force continuum, you could do something like that. You could say something like that. And as a way of quelling the physical resistance that was going to follow, and then you having to use resistance. There was a time when I worked in another part of the county as a patrolman, and I went into there was a young man who was about 6'7", big headed, big head, big melon, I call it, and
like that.
I got a big dome.
Yeah. So he had cleared the place out with a pool cue and heard a lot of people. I walked in, he had the pool cue, and I'm 5'7", and he wasn't about to listen to me, although we knew each other. So I told him I just got a new gun and he had a big head and I was going to shoot him in the head. Just keep it up. So he said, "Man, you're crazy. You're crazy." And when the other officers got there, he was handcuffed, taken to jail, no problem. So the defense attorney, I'll point this out to you.
That's fine with me.
Defense attorney asked me when I was on the stand if I threatened to kill his client. And I said, yes, I did. I said, but I had no intention of doing that. My purpose was to get him to comply.
Yeah.
And so I said he complied, and we went on. But I had no intention of doing that.
Now let me.
I think that was in front of Judge Mestamaker. And
I was going to pick at this.
Yeah.
So the prosecutor object to that question?
No.
See, if he'd objected, the relevance is nil, and it wouldn't have even gotten answered.
Well, I thought it was a good answer
because it's not a defense. It is.
Yeah,
it is.
It was one of his better moments on the stand, dude.
Yeah,
showed it worked.
Good answer. And
yeah, it worked.
It worked. But my point being that you can make all kinds of threats. You don't have to follow through with them, but you have an objective of accomplishing something without using physical force. And I think it was wrong to take that out of the use of force continuum. And we have a whole, raft of other things. And what people don't understand is when you're on the street And especially when you're by yourself and you're in the middle of a fight, and you're in the middle of somebody trying to take your gun, you're in the middle of a lot that's going on. You don't have time to really sit there and think, well, this is what this manual says. This is, you're
That's why training comes in.
correct, but you have to have that implanted in your brain, what you're going to do. And the best way to get out of it for me at that time was doing that.
But that sort of thing, what you just described, Mike, is that sort of tactic is frowned upon now, by and large, is it not?
It's not allowed.
Yeah, and I have seen that, and it's because of people like me who are so hell bent to find wrongdoing amongst police officers like yourself or other police officers are on the street. I remember we had an investigative reporter at Channel 9 who was looking at all these use of force incidents.
Right.
I already know who you're talking about.
And he wasn't finding it. He wasn't finding quite as many as he wanted to make his report seem as lopsided as he wanted it to seem. So he said, well, what about threat of use of force? He says, where's all the records on these? And we believe we don't keep threat of use of force. So not only were you required to document use of force, now he had to go back and you got to start documenting threat of use of force.
Right.
So like what you did, you would have had to sit down later that night and do a whole ass load of paperwork,
Right.
because you threatened this guy with some sort of escalation of violence in order to get him to comply.
Right.
I mean that kind of stuff
Makes no sense.
that doesn't have any real world use on the street, if you ask me.
If you talk to me or an adult like that, I'm okay with it. But if you're pulling over my kid, regardless, or any kid, 16-year-olds driving around, and you're talking about, breaking legs and taking care of business over in Somalia with Black Hawk Down shit, I'm gonna be pissed off if that's my kid.
Well, you should be pissed
That's
off. You
horseshit.
should be pissed off at your kid and not be a sorry ass parent.
He was pulled over for a traffic violation.
Well,
Too bad.
Well, that, it again,
If your kid's a punk, then that's on the parents.
Didn't you just get a speeding ticket, you fucking punk ass?
Yeah, well, I didn't. But I didn't. I
Yeah,
didn't.
you're a
badmouth-
fucking punk. If
I
that's
didn't badmouth the cop.
if the delineation is a speeding ticket or a
That
traffic
nice
infraction,
young lady who pulled me over. We're good friends.
you're a punk ass.
Which we talked about on the podcast.
Yeah,
That's how that
apparently
comes
Rob has a case like that pending. So
Not at all. Rob had it.
Yeah.
Rob's a punk too because I got one in July.
But yeah, well,
I'm gonna
you know,
say
that's for a whole nother discussion to go on. But
Same 1 mile,
but
square mile
but you're
jurisdiction.
exactly correct. And the other thing that happens is somebody takes 30 seconds of what I said,
Yeah. Right.
and it goes all over social media.
which we talk about all the time of not
Right.
getting the whole context.
Correct.
Be in the back of an ambulance
Right.
and have some drug head threatening to kill you. I'm like, literally multiple times in my career, 22 and a half years of doing this. Go ahead, motherfucker, try it and see what happens.
Well, and I will say this about the back of the ambulance: you guys are protected
Yes,
with HIPAA, so you don't have to let anybody in there, and you can say HIPAA says we don't have to do
exactly.
this. On the other hand, we have to say, literally,
You have to turn everything over.
correct.
Now you got
Yeah.
body cam, you got cameras, and
Right.
and the microphones and everything.
I'll
Correct.
tell you what though, even if it was me, I'm going back to this shit show.
Not
Dan.
criticizing.
No. I get it. No, it's a completely different scenario. But what most people that aren't in first responder world
Right.
don't understand, and you brought it when you're by yourself, you're going to do whatever you have to do. I'm getting
Right.
out. I'm going
Yeah.
home.
Right.
I'm going fucking home. I
Right.
promise you that.
Better to be
Right.
judged by 12 than carried by 6 was the motto in the police academy back in the 90s.
Well, yeah, that used to be.
I'm
That's
pretty
what
sure
they
that
said.
started well before the 90s.
Oh, I'm sure,
Yeah,
but I was
okay.
there in the 90s, not like the 1890s, Dan, like you, buddy. But the point I was going to make, not that if a cop tells me on a speeding ticket to get out of the car and then tells me if you run, I'm going to break your fucking leg before you can. First of all, looking at me knows I'm not going to run. But secondly, I'm going to look at him and I'm going to tell him what I'm going to do to him. You try to break my leg, I'm going to
Well-
fucking knock your ass out and shove my dick up your ass.
Again, you're and see,
Well,
I would.
And
Is
in
that-
civilized
wrong?
society, that's not really the way things are supposed
Oh,
to
is that
go.
how it's supposed to go when a cop says that to a teenager getting pulled over for a speeding ticket? Oh,
But
he's
Rob-
a punk ass.
But Rob, if you're gonna comply from the get go, getting to that stage that you just described is not going to happen.
If I'm threatened
Mike,
with
would
a
you
broken
please-
leg for a
Yeah,
speeding
well,
ticket,
would you take it from there, please?
I will. I think you're coming up with extremes there, Rob. I don't
Thank
think
you.
that.
all right,
I don't think that. And if that happened, it was one of my officers. Then that would
no,
be a
that was
different
from the
matter. But-
DOJ. I get it, but I'm
but-
just saying that
yeah,
I disagree with Dan's
Well,
assessment of
and
a punk.
the other thing too.
Punk ass.
The other thing too, there's a lot of 14-year-old kids that are big kids, and
that aren't going to
if
run
they're
like
high,
me.
that it's got nothing to do with that. It's all dictated by the circumstances. You cannot generalize every situation. It's determined by the totality of what?
Circumstances, but
Correct.
nonetheless, kids are
Never-
different
not
than
nevertheless-
adults.
Not nevertheless, what is it?
Totality of the
Thank you.
circumstances. I said circumstances, Mike.
And so
God, I feel like I'm on a quiz show.
Well, he's talking to you. He's
What-
talking to you like a child because you're acting like one.
What is
no, I'm not talking.
circumstances?
I'm talking to you like the attorney that you are. That you should know that, but
I don't believe I'm acting like a child, Dan or Jason.
that you know that you're doing that just to create. But anyway,
No, Mike, seriously, I take exception with a punk comment to a teenager that gets a traffic pullover.
but again, you know,
We don't know all the context. Maybe he was calling that cop a punk bitch.
and that doesn't matter. You should.
I'll get
You
the
should
public
just
record.
too.
Fuck it.
You should still be better than
but-
that. I agree.
But anyway, you can't possibly say what would happen under the circumstances.
And I'm going off largely of the experience that I've had over the years, and I've gotten just the smallest of looks and the smallest of taste of what cops go through on the street every single day. And I see I see the scums and the derelicts and everyone else that they deal with day in and day out, and how you guys are able to do this sort of thing, and that goes for Jason too. I mean, it's a small miracle that you're able to keep your sanity day after day after day, and with all the civilian overview that we have of the police department and police actions and all the rest of it, and you've got largely political appointees in there, people who have never, and I'm not saying they never spend time on the streets, but don't have any appreciation for what cops go through day in and day out on the streets, and how much knowledge that you obtain just through the repetition of being in the same neighborhood every day, of seeing what goes on, of knowing who's the good guy and who's not a good guy, and stuff like that.
Right.
And they want to pretend that you're not supposed to bring that real world experience into handling whatever situation you're up against at that moment. And it just bugs me to no end.
A couple of things here. When you stop some, and I've had, I can't tell you how many times someone got stopped in the middle of the night and the officer had his hand on his gun when he walked up to the car. And I've had people come in and say, "Hey, I'm not a bad guy. Why did he have his hand on his gun?" Well, that's because he doesn't know who he or she is walking up to. You don't know. And with the juvenile, the same thing. When we first started back in 1980, never considered a juvenile having a gun. Today, look at the violence and the level of violence that goes on with juveniles.
Depending on where you are, everyone has a gun.
And it's in Cincinnati too. How many juveniles are involved in shootings? And how, you just don't.
We're going to
know.
have a record number this year of kids under the age of 18 shot and involved in gun violence this year.
And if I put my hat on, my master's in criminology talks about the small period of time that we have to influence a generation and teach them what's right or wrong. And we've lost that with a generation. So we need to start focusing on what we're going to do with the next generation that's coming up, because we've lost it. And, our justice system today is just not working.
And it goes, look at where your kids are going to college if you're paying the bill too, because the indoctrination does not quit in college. I was just reading an article about all the money funneling to these liberal arts schools and these state institutions that are indoctrinating kids to what the professors, and I'm going to say a trans movement, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, you need to get them when they're young, because that's when you good soil makes a good tree. And without that good soil, be a parent.
I could discuss that for hours, theories on the causation of crime. And it involves the community. Yep. As it used to, it takes a village.
Oh, Hillary.
And
That's who I heard say it once.
It does. It takes. Do you remember? Yeah, don't call me that, please.
Well, I wasn't. I was quoting Hillary,
Yeah.
but she's not up in the sky yet.
Yeah, it wasn't necessary. Just because I said the totality of circumstances doesn't mean you need to get really nasty. But anyway,
Oh, the claws are coming out.
yeah. So, but it goes back to the kids protesting today. They just don't understand.
They have no idea.
How good it is in this country, and neither do the professors that are espousing their beliefs to these kids instead of presenting both sides to them and letting them decide and the truthful side of it and letting them make a decision on what they support.
Mhm.
They don't know. They're not educated to understand what they're protesting against. They don't know the history. They don't know, when I heard that, and I'm getting off topic here a bit, but when I heard that podcaster talking about what Osama bin Laden sent to this country after the 9/11 attack, I was shocked because they don't understand what Osama bin Laden believed for the West. The West should have been, that woman would have never been on a podcast ever. And they just don't understand that, a member of the LGBTQ community, if you look under Sharia law, the radical part of Sharia law, they would be murdered.
Thrown off a building.
And
Gays for Palestine.
so
Butt sex on my mind. Remember that song?
That fucking song.
We'll play that song for this guy at
Oh my
shit,
God,
what
it was hilarious.
some council meeting. Got up there. He had his minute and a half, and he used every bit of it.
well, yeah, I don't.
But I want to spin back though, real quick, Mike, away from the college aspect. But you were talking about, and I agree. I mean, you do deal with all factions of society, and you never know what you're going to get when you make a traffic stop. We were always taught, as you approach the car, you don't know if that person just killed somebody there in the trunk or whatnot. You always put your fingers on the back, the trunk or whatever, just so you have your prints there so they could help prove that person's the one that killed you if you don't make it home that night. You don't know who you're going to stop, Bonnie and Clyde, or just Bonnie going to the grocery store in a hurry, or Bonnie has to take a shit or whatnot. I had one of those. But you get callous as an officer over years, and you get callous as a first responder, and we've talked about it and how it's nice that mental health and mental health awareness and treatment is not something perverse to people in that field. But I think it's important to get the mental health treatment and to try to put off the callousness that develops or correct it, because you still got to remember, you come home at night, that is your priority number one. But that's still a fucking person that you're pulling over. And it could be a murderer with a body in the trunk, or it could be a woman that went out after work, got a promotion, and had a couple of drinks. Now she's OVI and she's getting arrested. And she's not just a piece of shit. She's still a person, Dan. And that presumption of innocence.
Well, you are misreading
the presumption of innocence,
and you are mischaracterizing
is
what I'm
missing
saying
from the generalities that I hear a lot of times in the press and the media. It is not a presumption of innocence anymore. You are guilty until proven innocent, because everybody gets lumped together. I just hope that does not continue in some way. There's a way to reverse that tide, because I see it on a regular daily basis. If you're in court, you're a piece of shit. You're guilty.
Are you talking about your clients?
No. I'm talking about anybody and everybody in court.
touche.
All right, touche, Dan. Dan's little speakeasy there where he gets his marching orders, Fox News. Anytime you see anybody in shackles or a courtroom, they are guilty.
I can tell I'm not going to be invited back to this podcast.
No, you're good, Mike. I love it. I love it. Bring it.
Rob threatens to not invite Dan back every podcast.
No,
so you're in good company.
I hate the generality of it. But I get your point, and
right.
I know what your point is.
Well, that all goes back to the stupidity of that, with judging people, by their religion, by their skin color, by their profession. It all goes back to that. And it's ignorance.
Their onesies and choice of lake attire,
well,
like shackles.
Quite frankly, and I've learned this throughout, many, many years, that it is, there are many, many good people out there of all races, of all religions. And I would say 99% of all people are good people. no matter what they're doing. And I believe that. And no matter where they live, you look at people who can't help their lot in life. That doesn't mean they're bad people. But when you're talking about the mentally ill, I'm very passionate about that. We send billions of dollars so the Palestinians and Hamas can teach anti-Semitic and pound anti-Semitic beliefs into these children's heads. But we can't take care of the mentally ill in this country. And that's a big problem, huge problem. We need to be taking care of our people and not worrying about everybody else. It's quite simple. There's no reason why anyone should go without mental health care in this country. None.
Well,
Between mentally ill, homeless veterans, all the shit that we have enough fucking problems here.
Right.
And enough money
right.
or some money to throw in this direction versus everything is going out.
Right.
And we've talked about that many a time.
What are your thoughts, Mike, in regards to the
believe-
closing of the state institutions for the mentally ill individuals? Because what I see now is they're on the streets or they're in jail or prison because families had enough.
And, for the jails, I recall with Hamilton County Jail, the cost of the psychotropic medication that the jail is required to give them. Now they have mental health people in there, but that's not the kind of mental health care that they need. Is phenomenal. And they don't, and then you run across something like issue 27 where no one wants to support a jail, but they also don't want those people on the street.
Sure.
And
then they bitch about bonds because that old jail is all full. We're all liberal. We're letting criminals out.
And then you're looking at people who cannot help themselves, people that truly need mental health care. It infuriates me because with all of the money we spend and all the politics, and we ignore that. Look how they cleaned up San Francisco, how quickly they cleaned that up. and then all of a sudden, and I have friends who are in law enforcement out there. And San Francisco, I was stationed out there in the Coast Guard, and it was a beautiful city, and I would not go back the way it was because it's just
now.
No. So,
Mike, real quick, I'm going to do some. I want to talk about our friend at First Green Landscaping and Building Maintenance Cleaning Services. Is your property not receiving the attention it needs or deserves? Call our friend Trinity at First Green to get it looking great. Simply call Trinity at 513-646-3035 or email them at trinity@gofirstgreen.com. First Green provides the best services for the best price in Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky and will get your property to be the envy of the neighborhood, whether you need landscaping, snow or tree removal, building maintenance, deck or concrete repair, staining, or something else. Call them first, hence the name First Green. 513-646-3035 or email them at trinity@gofirstgreen.com. They're the first go-to for all your landscaping and building maintenance needs. First Green. Or move in next to Dan and your yard will look great.
You nailed that one.
Thank you.
Nailed it. Good work. I'm proud of you.
Speed reading.
Super proud of you.
That phonics course is kicking ass, man.
So as we dial it down, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on. I've
short notice.
I've worked, very short notice, but I've worked with you. I saw what you did in the Fusion Center, when I was working in the EOC, for different events, whether it be the tenting trial where we didn't know if there was going to be riots or not. All the information you were getting up to us, you and your team were phenomenal and very intrigued. I can't wait to talk to you more about some more of.
I appreciate that. I was very passionate about that, and I appreciate your compliments.
No, you killed that place, man. It was everybody I know that worked there had nothing but good things to say. When he said you were coming on, I was super excited. So that's awesome.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate you boning up too, because I know you talked about this a couple of weeks ago or a month ago or something, and had to brush off the dust on the notes. And
actually, what I boned up on today was not this topic, but I boned up on Sharia law and the difference between Sunnis and
there's a little teaser for the next episode.
That's what I boned up on, and it had to do with
the Sunnis and the Shiites.
And their differences and why they're the way they are, and how that goes back to the biblical times, and so people understand what they're protesting for and what this could be like in this country. And it's a very interesting to understand all of that. and to, really delve into it.
Keith,
Yeah.
Mike's got his headphones on. I'm going to give him my computer. Will you, for the sake of everybody watching here, play Primetime 99 again?
Yeah.
Alex Stein. You got to see this, Mike.
Hold on, I go.
Oh, do you have that dialed up?
Can you see it on his?
I don't have it.
Yeah.
I don't have it dialed up. I
Oh,
can
okay.
find it.
Because who was it? Will Curry knew exactly who in the hell we were talking about, man.
Hilarious.
As soon as he said it, I rememred the name.
Is this
Stand by.
a comment that came in, or
That guy named Alex Stein, he whatever is the hot button issue of the day, he's a comedian.
okay?
And he does a lot of man on the street videos, but he also goes to like his local city council
Mhm.
and then makes an argument, one of the most ridiculous arguments you could ever imagine. And so when the whole all these kids came out supporting Palestine and all that, he came out and did a whole thing in front of the city council there, just showing the list of all these people who, all the LGBTQs for Palestine and Hamas and all that kind of stuff. And these kids don't know, they wouldn't last 10 seconds
No.
in a place like Gaza if they went there waving their rainbow flags and all that shit.
In Iran, if you commit a theft, now remember, we don't lock people up for anything under $1,000. In Iran, if you steal a
How's
dog,
that working out in San Francisco?
they amputate their arm. They
Don't
still
go to
do
Claremont
that.
County then, because they do lock you up.
Well, I'm not talking about Ohio. Ohio's got some common sense, but can you imagine that? You got a kid that now you're talking about a juvenile and they can have their arm amputated.
They don't fuck around with that kind of shit.
Yeah,
That's why I and my juvenile children do not reside in some shit ass country like that.
All right, I got it.
All right, here we go.
I didn't think you did because you're here.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to end my speech with a beautiful song I wrote for
It's a whole
all
new
the
story,
gays
so I
of
gotta
Palestine
find the beginning.
and the rest of the
Sorry,
world.
guys.
It goes a little.
It's still. Yeah, pop off one of those things, you'll be able to hear it a lot better. The sound's not
Okay,
coming.
you guys are starting my timer, guys. You guys are trying to mess me up, Plano. All right, well, it's Primetime 99, Pimp on a Blimp. You guys know who I am.
Hip on a blimp, that's right.
I'm here representing Gays for Palestine. My name is Primetime 99 Alex Stein. I'm the president of the Plano Gays for Palestine Facebook group. We're an organization representing the 2SL LGBTQIA plus community that stands with the persecuted Muslims who just want to jihad in peace. All right. So a lot of people are rushing to judgment against the Palestinians right now because of the stuff they are seeing on TV. I just want to say a lot of people have misconceptions about Palestine. Mia Khalifa, one of the most popular porn stars in America, who has done a bunch of lesbian scenes, is standing with the Palestinians. And just because they've thrown a few of my allies off of roofs in the past, that doesn't make them bad people. We must look past that because, this is 2024. Palestine is changing. Just because gay people had to run to Israel for protection in the past doesn't mean anything. We love that their women have very little rights. That's why they have such few traffic accidents. So we agree on more than you think. Palestine is on its way in the gay direction. The tikka masala is so good because they can lock their women in the kitchen all day. Palestine is very misunderstood. And their passionate dedication to Hamas is an inspiration to other gays like myself on keeping that same passion for their lover or partner. And when it comes to switching roles like being a top or bottom, Palestinians are really starting to come around to the gay Hershey Highway because in their culture, they have Bakabazi boys that often they use as work apprentices and underage sexual partners. If you don't believe me, just Google New York Times Bakabazi and you will see that there's lots of gay sex happening in the Middle East. And that maybe through some anal oral, the Palestinians can disarm their enemy. And maybe all join Grindr and have some wild glory hole action, okay? And seriously, us gays love hummus. So the more Hamas, the better. We just better not run out of naan bread, LOL. And I want to end my speech with a beautiful song I wrote for all the gays of Palestine and the rest of the world. It goes a little bit something like this. Gays for Palestine, but sex on my mind. Let me stick it in. I'll bang you like a friend. The fun will never end. The roof is where I sin. Throw me head first, 10 stories high. Since I'm gay, I guess I'll die. Thank you for your passion. Your booty I will be smashing. Palestine loves the gays. That's why they help with all the AIDS. Stereotypes are tricky. Palestinians love the dicky.
I almost feel like you
I'll
sing this.
say it one more time. All the gays of Palestine. All the gays of Palestine.
We played it once.
Yeah. So I'd like to add something to that. I have friends that are Palestinian,
Jesus Christ.
and I try not to group, not to discount. That was funny, but
That guy.
on a serious note, I have friends that are Palestinians, and
Can you imagine though, being that guy going to a city council meeting or a school board meeting?
No,
That's where he did it. Somewhere in Texas.
Plano,
Plano,
Texas.
Texas. Yeah.
Plano,
And
Texas.
that city council had to sit there.
Yeah, because he got
and
his
let him
3 minutes of
finish.
time.
Yeah.
I still can't believe they let him. Can you imagine doing that in a local trustee meeting?
Oh, good luck.
No, that'd be the end of that. Or, well, I can imagine it at a Forest Hill School Board meeting.
Yes, those are always entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got to have you on to Pappas someday. That'll be great.
Oh. Yeah. Except you might as well not give me a microphone because he never stops talking.
Well, Mike, we appreciate you coming on, man.
I enjoyed
Thank
it.
you for the short notice. I apologize. Next
No
time
problem.
We'll get the topics correct. I know I wanted to do law enforcement. We talked about that a little bit.
Sure.
And you had mentioned in regards to the Middle East strife
Right.
that's been going on for centuries and millennium.
Right. I'd love to talk about that. We can talk about causation of crime, and I know I won't use the V word again, but as long as you don't use the H word,
RCD.
village takes a village.
What's the H word?
Hillary.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Well, see, I used it. You used it. We both used it together. How about
No.
them albums? I do love the cop stash, man.
Do you think?
I think I'm
Thank you.
gonna shape mine up coming up here.
I really love
this
the
week.
totality of circumstances. That's what I like. What I
TLC,
really liked was
table
saying,
of content.
what I really liked was saying totality of.
Circumstances.
Thank you.
Yes. Mike,
you got talked to like you were a
I
child
know.
today. I love it.
love it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Mike, thank you
I'd
so
love to
much.
come back.
I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna manscape this mustache. Get it showing pretty good. Got to ask a question, Dan, before you manscape that beard. Are you gonna manscape down
Only
there?
a few more days.